Hey everyone, it's your favorite host, Marcus Norman of Gentleman Style Podcast Show. And today I have come into the stage this incredible guest. This is someone who's not afraid to say what many folks in the mental health profession and world are thinking, but don't always say out loud. They think it, but they can't really feel comfortable, don't really feel comfortable talking about it. Mr. Daniel Fleshner is a licensed professional counselor, certified sex therapist, and founder of Inflection Point Therapy. And he's here. He brings a rare combination of clinical depth and system level insight and wisdom, challenging the status quo and how we think about therapy and how we care for ourselves and getting access to care and what actually helps people heal and do better in life and win. And so I can't hold this incredible man back any further. Help me welcome to the stage the incredible Mr. Daniel Fleshner. How are you, sir? Welcome to the Gentleman Style Podcast Show.
I'm doing great. I'm excited to be here. How are you?
I am fantastic, sir. You have insight, and I'm so glad you said yes. And because I don't think we're doing well. We're not doing well as a whole. We're not doing well as a society. We're not doing well as a people when it comes to the mental health space. But before I get started, I like to start with a curveball, a softball
Okay.
question. Why you could do anything, right? You could do anything that you set your mind to, and you've achieved some very high accolades in the mental health space. Why enter the mental health space out of all the things that you could be doing? Why did you choose to be here, helping, giving back in that way?
Sure. So I didn't set out from day one to be a therapist or anything like that. I actually was so sure for a long time I was going to be a lawyer,
Mm,
mostly because I was like, I don't know what I want to do with my life. And that seemed like a reasonable way to make a living and support myself. But I went to undergrad, and the two things I studied were political science and psychology. And I always had this weird line where I'd say, political science is the one that is actually going to lead me somewhere and I'm actually going to do something with. Psychology is just the thing I'm passionate about and that I'm interested in. And at some point it clicked that this was a really strange way of thinking about things when the thing I'm passionate about, the thing I'm interested in is probably the one I should be pursuing. And um, after just a lot of soul searching and doing a lot of my own therapy and seeing some of the benefits that it had on me personally, I really wanted to have that impact on other people. And I got really fortunate that, my family was supportive of me going that direction. My partner was really supportive of me going that direction. She was always a big influence on that. And I also just had some great mentors in the space and everything. And I really couldn't be happier with the way that it's turned out.
absolutely, absolutely. That is necessary. How has it sounded like you made the choice because you weren't passionate about being a lawyer and you were just looking at it from a financial standpoint. Like, this is a way to provide, this is good money, or what it seems to be good money, and let me do that thing. But you weren't your heart wasn't there. And so
Mhm.
you also took that path of psychology in the mind, which is can be a scary place. Uh, that's not a that's a scary place, and all the different avenues that the mind can go down. Um,
Mhm.
there's a specialty and a need for uh, mental health professionals, and the United States is underserved in that area. Did you know or have any of that data that also fed into your decision in becoming a therapist?
Honestly, at the time, no. I think I probably should have looked into that. It was more this big shift from this is what I think is the really pragmatic choice to this is the passion, this is the call. And I'm to your point, all that stuff with the mind, like I'm just so interested in it. I'm fascinated by it. You ask a lot of therapists, why'd you get into this? And the answer is because I want to help people. I really want to, improve the lives of others. And that's true. I don't want to get you wrong. I absolutely do want to help people and improve the lives of others. But hearing about how people think, how they make decisions, how they go about their lives, it's just fascinating to me every day. And so that's a big part of it too. And that's something I don't think I could have gotten in any other field. And so I went into this being a little idealistic in some respects, thinking, well, I'll get a job, I'll figure it out without looking into the data as much as I should have. But that leads me to a lot of what I think we're going to talk about today, which is noticing some of the struggles that we've come up against. And, I've been fortunate in that, like, I've really found a good group of people who've supported me and helped me get to a good space in this field. But there are a lot of people in mental health that don't have that and really have to fight and claw to make a living when what they're trying to do is help people and do important work.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What you've mentioned that you've had an incredible support system several times now, and it's like what thing specifically a part of your upbringing helps you in the mental health space have a direct correlation to why you are successful in the mental health space? Was it always hard work? Was it your parents teaching you certain life skills or pouring into you? What specifically has helped you do well in this space? Because I think it's twisted, right?
Mhm.
I always see the statistics and they say there's a huge need for mental health professionals, especially males. But
Mhm.
then when you reach out to people, you talk to people, they don't see it in themselves. They don't want to get therapy. "Ooh, I don't want to get a therapist. I don't believe I need a therapist. Not yet."
Mhm.
It's always you always come to the therapist when it's too late, right? Or you're well past the point where you should have already booked an appointment. Why do you what part of your upbringing helps you stay the course and stay grounded in why you've been a success?
Yeah, a big part of it for me was that stigma that exists for so many people wasn't as much of a thing for me. When I was growing up, I had my own share of struggles and everything like that. And there was never this idea of, well, just have a stiff upper lip and power through it, or
Mm,
you're weak in some way for needing help. And so I think it was really helpful for me to not have to get through some of those societal messages that a lot of people receive. And I grew up in a place where I had a supportive family. I had all my needs met. I went to a good school and all that. And yet I still struggled with feelings of anxiety and depression and things like that. And that gave me the idea that, okay, I have all these advantages and this can happen to me. So it can really happen to anybody. And to take that a step further, can you imagine if you're facing some of the stuff that I was facing, and also, your parents weren't around as much because they were trying to work extra jobs to put food on the table, or, if you have any one of these million other ways in which life can be really challenging for you and you're trying to deal with all of this. And so it really just destigmatized the whole thing for me and made me realize that this is just something that we need to be providing to people and not trying to have that sense of judgment. And then the other thing I want to go into a little bit, it's also just a support in a professional sense. So when we graduate, in order to get fully licensed, we need to work under clinical supervision for a certain number of hours. And in Maryland, I think it was like 3,000 hours or something, and a certain amount has to be directly with clients. But I basically found this supervisor who I didn't know her particularly well, but I had a good feeling about her. And she was just unbelievably supportive the entire time. And so even within the field, if we can be supporting each other as much as possible and we can help in the way that she helped craft my career, then I think therapists in general will be better off. But it can be kind of hit or miss. Like, some of these supervisors are awesome, like the one I had, and unfortunately some of them are dealing with their own stuff, or maybe just don't have some of the teaching skills, even if they're really well intentioned. And so people just don't really get some of that information that they need in order to be the best therapist they can.
absolutely. Did you have any pushback coming up into the world of therapy? And thank you for laying the groundwork on the process of
Sure.
becoming a therapist. But did you have any pushback when getting your hours? Any resistance because you are a male, right? You are a male in what seems to be, or the stereotype is, this is a predominantly female industry.
Mhm.
So when a male enters the space, it tends to be like, oh, what, you're infiltrating my space, this was supposed to be for me, and now here you come and you're killing it. Like, did you face any obstacles?
Sort of. Honestly, a lot of them were internal for me because I think I internalized a lot of that idea of, am is this a space I should be in? Am I intruding? I don't want to be, but at the same time, I also don't want to limit myself by just not extending myself for an opportunity that may actually be both good for my career and a way that I can help people. So I didn't face a ton of that pushback from other therapists, but where I did see that a little bit would be certain clients, especially in the sex therapy space, because it could be vulnerable, that would prefer to work with women, or something like that. And for me, I just came to a place where I needed to accept that that's their preference, and that's okay if they're going to be more comfortable opening up to a therapist that's not a male, then they should seek out a therapist that's not a male, because the most important thing is that they're going to get help. And it works the other way too. There are some men who are not as comfortable opening up to women or something like that, and they'll seek me out, and so it all kind of evens out over time. And I've actually been really fortunate to have been accepted here, and so much of this, I think, is getting past our own self-imposed limitations more so than the pushback of other people.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you for that. That's needed. That's good. That's good. I like that. I like that you stayed the course and you didn't give up and you pushed back and you continued. You didn't let that discourage you. Like, oh, I
Mhm.
want a female to talk about sex therapy. Why get into sex therapy? Why specifically? Did you see something that was like, listen, this is a space where it's making the most money, or why did you become a professional in and certified in sex therapy?
So this one's actually a little bit funny. I honestly kind of fell into it. I was looking at what jobs I could get. I had a basic framework of, this is the type of supervisor I want. This is the type of environment I want to be working in. This is the type of population. Like, I personally work a lot better with adults than with kids. I think the people that work with kids are great, but it's just not what I'm strongest at. And I was looking at all these jobs. I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And I found someone who checked every box, and then noticed, oh, yeah, her specialty is sex and relationships. And I wasn't opposed to it, and kind of thought, okay, I need to figure out, is this something I'm okay with? I've always been of the opinion that sex shouldn't be stigmatized or anything like that, but it hadn't occurred to me that sex therapy is something I should go into. So I applied. I figured, why not? I'll have a conversation with her. We'll see what's going on. And she basically told me from day one, like, yeah, this is my specialty. Here's all the kind of stuff you'd be getting trained on. Here's all the information. And I got too little sleep and drank too much caffeine between interviews one and two, to while like reading all these books and everything, and it just grabbed me. And so I think, had I not found someone who otherwise seemed so appealing, I might have ended up on an entirely different path. And for me, it was just about taking an opportunity that was there. But I feel so fortunate, because the more I read about it, the more I have started working with clients and everything, the better fit it felt like.
As a professional sex therapist, who what type of clients gravitate to you more? Is it men? Is it men because they feel comfortable around you, or is it more women who are and what kind of problems are you helping
Mhm.
us work through when you see a client?
I would say I get more men than women, at least in terms of the proportion of people that seek out sex therapy in general. And I think so much of it is destigmatizing things for them. These are oftentimes people that have grown up and have never talked with anybody except for an intimate partner about their sex life, and all of a sudden they're being asked to do that. And so a big handful of the first sessions are just getting them to the point where they're okay talking about sex, and they're okay saying why they're actually there. It's really common for somebody to come and say, well, I'm here because I'm having a fight with my wife, which is kind of a quarter of the truth, but in actuality, it's something in the bedroom that they're too embarrassed to say, and that's okay. And then another proportion of the clientele, I don't work with them as much anymore, but I did a lot at the start, is working with couples and trying to get them into a space where they can talk about their stuff. And I say so much, the biggest value I have to them is less about any specific sense of expertise I can give them, and more about basically forcing them to sit down for an hour and actually talk about the things that they've been avoiding, and holding them accountable to actually have that conversation with one another. And in terms of the actual issues, it can be a million different things. A lot of times, it can be things like erectile dysfunction, it can be difficulty orgasming. Those are some of the more rudimentary ones, but there are others along. Well, one partner has a much higher libido than the other, and that's less about, well, I want to have sex all the time, and more about, I try to initiate this and I'm feeling rejected, and that makes me feel like my partner's not attracted to me, or something along those lines. And so much of the work is figuring out, okay, what's actually the problem here? Is it actually, well, I want to have sex more than her, and that's just this huge issue? Or is it, this makes me feel insecure, and I'm having trouble placing why I'm actually feeling that way, or I'm having trouble figuring out why this thing that we could theoretically compromise on is all of a sudden feeling like this massive issue.
Absolutely. Have you faced any? Thank you for that. Have you faced any obstacles with insurance? dealing with insurance, or are
Yeah.
you cash pay? Because I imagine with the ever changing insurance dynamic, it's is sex therapy covered by insurance? And have you ever had obstacles or issues with getting, like, balancing? Hey,
Mhm.
this client is wanting this, and they're dealing with this, and it's like, oh, that's not covered. That's not covered.
Yeah, so I do accept insurance, and insurance is a huge headache up front to get it all set up and everything like that. It's not and that 95% of the time after that, it runs relatively smoothly, but when you do face a problem, it is just a pain to get it figured out. Sex therapy is covered generally, it's just covered the same way that, um, you know, normal mental health counseling is covered, for lack of a better term, and whether the couple sessions are covered is gonna be really dependent on the specific policy. And so for me, a lot of the big issue is figuring out some of the nuances related to it, or figuring out what do I do when a client that I've really done a lot of good work for and a client that's in this vulnerable space gets a new job and all of a sudden they go from one insurance policy to another and maybe the second one's something I'm not in network with. Or if they lose their job and lose their insurance and all of a sudden they're in the most challenging space of their life while they're trying to deal with that, they're worried about how they're going to put food on the table, and all of a sudden they're now being told, you know, you don't have insurance, so you can't get your therapy, which might be helpful for them. And, then I try to figure out some way. Can I just take a lower rate and you can try to pay me in cash? We'll figure it out for the both of us. Do we try to see each other less frequently so that it can be something that's affordable? And every now and then you just get one of these weird quirks. Like I have a client recently, she's facing really tough financial stuff right now. She only has a $10 copay. I'm willing to eat that $10. I'm not that concerned about that. But what her insurance company is trying to tell me is, well, actually, no, you have to go to the letter of the law of the policy. So I'm basically in this big battle for them to just allow myself to take less money for my services so that she's able to get by and she's still able to do things. And you can do it, but there's all this paperwork. And so that's kind of a long-winded way of saying like insurance works kind of, but then when it doesn't work, it becomes a huge issue, and it often doesn't work at the most inopportune times.
So you're saying because she has a $10 copay, but what the insurance doesn't know, or maybe they don't care, is that she's having financial difficulties, and so you're not allowed to continue seeing her while racking up this $10 copay, and
Yeah,
insurance is having issues with that.
basically, I'm telling them you can pay me exactly you could normally pay me. Like I'm not asking you for an extra $10, but basically on all the documentation that we have to fill out, it's going to say like this claim can't be filed because she hasn't paid and little things like that. And so you just find these little quirks and you figure out these little nuances that somehow made their way into a policy, into like page 18, appendix 4, footnote 12 of some policy at some point that no human being should ever have to read. And yet here I am with my little flashlight and highlighter trying to figure out what I can do to just try to get these people care. And the problem is every second I'm doing that is time I could otherwise be preparing for another client, doing something else that could either help someone or God forbid spending some time by myself and recharging a little bit.
That's fair. That's fair. That makes perfect sense. That's a lot of rigmarole to continue helping people, especially when you've seen progress, right?
Hmm.
You've seen progress, you gain progress, and then here comes this snag. Here comes this little thing that is 10 times more difficult than it needs to be. So I feel your pain. I felt your pain when you was describing that. That
Yeah, you
is
could
a
probably sense the frustration a bit.
yeah, that's a huge bummer, and that's a huge bummer, especially when a breakthrough is involved. What are do you ever have that issue with masculinity? Right, you're seeing a guy who wants to convey to you, or hopefully a couple sessions, and it will convey to you that they're having problems in the bedroom, or whatever the case may be, and it's two guys, right? What
Mm.
myths about masculinity show up most often in the therapy room? Um, is it like they're button heads and they don't want to talk to you because you're a guy. You're one of us.
I think it's less that they don't want to talk to me and more that they want me to be something I'm not. Like so often I'll have people come in and act like I'm one of their drinking buddies and be like, yeah, my wife was complaining about this, but come on, man, you get it. Like women, right? And in my head, I'm like, No, like that's not really where I'm coming from on this one. Um, and if you want to go have that conversation with some of your friends when you're, out on the golf course or something, then go do that. But right now, I want to talk about what's actually going on. And if you think your wife's being unreasonable, then that's okay. We can process that and talk through how you can best communicate with her or something along those lines. But what I'm not here to do is to sit and stay on the surface and to have these very like stereotypically masculine conversations, because you can do it. You don't need to get therapy to do that. You can just go do that
With
in
your
your regular
buddies.
life. I want to talk about what's actually going on.
Absolutely, the deeper issue, the deeper rooted
Hmm.
cause, and the deeper rooted problem. Do you offer at your practice? Do you offer medication, um, medication
No.
management for like the Cialis, the Viagra, or
Mm.
have you ever referred a client and say, "Listen, your problem could be solved with Cialis or Viagra, or this product or that medication"?
Yeah, so I personally don't, just because I don't have the license to prescribe it, but I have a whole list of, usually I'll just say, if you have a doctor you already go to, just go to them. But yeah, all the time I'll say either, do you have a doctor? Can I refer you to somebody? Because my big thing is, if you have this big problem in life and there's a fairly easy solution, let's do the fairly easy solution. There are enough complex problems out there that we don't need to add extra ones for ourselves. And one of the biggest things that we do is try to rule out any other factors that could be going on that are not necessarily things that I would normally be an expert at treating. And so, yeah, a lot of them is, if there's something physiological, can you go get Viagra or Cialis or something? Big one is, are you using a ton of substances or something like that? That can have a really big impact on sexual performance. And so, do we need to address substance use or something along those lines? Um, I'm trying to think. There's one more. Oh yeah, or like, are you on any other medications right now that could be contributing to this? And if so, can you just speak to your doctor about what you can do related to that? Can you figure out if those can be adjusted in some way to fix the problem? So I think it's like medical doctors in some way, where they're saying, okay, let's rule out all of the other things it could be, so we can figure out what's actually going on and treat that.
That makes sense. Let's start here and work our
Hmm.
way up to the Viagra or the Cialis if it's needed, but it may
Hmm.
not be needed. Um, are you seeing a lot? I heard this statistic that a lot of young men are needing Viagra and Cialis. It's not even like an old thing anymore. It's like
Hmm.
young men who should be viable and should be able to go out and do, and they're having trouble. Is that what you're seeing as well on your end professionally?
In some respects, and I think we need to push back a little bit on this societal norm that they should be able to go out and do all of that, or the natural expectation is that they can do that. And to be fair, it is more likely in an older population or an older client that they're going to need something like that, or they're going to face these problems. But my take on this is that this has always been a problem for a lot of young men, but they're finally getting the courage to actually speak up and try to find help, rather than just pretending the problem doesn't exist or trying to push through it.
That's real. And thank you for correcting me. I appreciate that. That's real. Pushing back, like, listen, it's okay. I think that's probably what you're seeing a
Yeah.
lot of is someone somewhere in the family made it weird or made it
Mhm.
uncomfortable, and they made you feel less than because you're what you have to take a pill. Well,
Mhm.
men in my day, that's not helping, Grandpa.
Mhm.
Like, Mom, that's not helping. Like, let's
Yeah.
and so I see that. I could see what you're saying, and thank you for correcting me on that.
No, yeah, you're all good. And that's something that comes up constantly, because it's the way we're all programmed from whatever family, society, whatever it may be. And so I think it's just something that we all need to um try to be mindful of. Like I have clients who, they come in and they're young, they've been dealing with this for like 3, 4 years. And I'm thinking, wow, like how tough must it have been for that person to come get help if they tried to do this on their own for such a long time without the problem being solved?
Right. That is a long time. 3 years is a long time. It's a
Yeah.
long breath. You think about holding your breath. Have you ever and that also brings me to the point what you're saying. Is this something that's been going on for years, or is this an acute situation where it's a one-off, right?
Hmm.
Hey, man, I am not able to perform in the bedroom with my girlfriend. Have you ever
Hmm.
like said, "Hey, let me see a picture of your girlfriend." Oh, that's why she's unattractive. That's it. That's the issue. right? Because before, the girlfriend prior, you had no problem, and now this new girlfriend, you have a problem. Oh, there's an attraction issue. You're not attracted to her. Like,
Yeah, I
and
mean, it's pretty straightforward. Like, if you're not attracted to someone, you're going to show up in a different way. So I don't think I'd necessarily ask for a picture, but I would ask them like, "Hey, what is your level of attraction to your partner? How do
oh,
you
good.
feel about them?" And so often they can you just kind of tell they beat around the bush. They don't want to say that, "Hey, I'm not attracted to her," but I mean, it happens. And if that's the case, I'd rather you be honest about it, because you can either think, well, how can I regain the attraction? It could be something that, you can talk through, or it might not be purely physical. It could be something interpersonal the two of them can really work through. Or if there really just is an incompatibility, for both of their sakes, I'd rather you address that. And if it's not going to work, move on, because she deserves to be with somebody that is attracted to her and that's really into her as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's fair. That's fair. And that's huge. And saying that, right? So you can say that. You can say, "Hey, man, y'all need to walk away from each other because you're not able to meet her needs, and she's not meeting your needs, right?"
Hmm.
Like, can you say that as a therapist?
Kinda, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say it maybe that directly, but I've definitely
Sure.
said, I've wondered if you've considered whether you're compatible, or I'm curious if you see this as the relationship that's a good long-term fit. So something along those lines. The only time I would be more direct about, hey, I really think we need to talk about potentially getting out of this relationship, is if there's abuse or something like that going on. But I can bring it up as a topic of conversation for them to explore, and then it's kind of up to them what they want to do at that point.
That's fair. That's fair. This is Daniel Fleshner on the
Yeah.
Gentleman Style Podcast Show, spilling the tea, helping us come to a better understanding around therapy, why we need it, why we need to address it, and why we need to actually work towards it. And this is good. I want to talk about buzzwords, right? Here they come. How do you professionally address kinks, poly, non-normative sexual identities? Um, I want to be a dog, right? She's like, those types of sexual. Have you addressed those? How do you work through clients? Have you gotten any of those types of clients?
Oh yeah, I'm here for it. Yeah, I enjoy talking about that stuff. Earlier I was saying I'm really fascinated about how people show up in the world and everything, and I think considering what does kink do for somebody, what does something like polyamory help, have someone be more satisfied. Things like that I think are really, really fascinating. And so for me, it's all about transparency and honesty with, your partner, your multiple partners, whatever it may be. And the question is not should I do kink versus should I not do kink, but it's how do I get on the same page with my partner? Is this something that's a good fit that they're open to exploring as well? Um, you know, being having multiple partners, in my opinion at least, is fine if everyone there is consenting. When it's not fine is when, you're just doing something on the down low and your wife or husband or partner or whatever doesn't know about it. That's when we run into issues. And so I'm not here to tell someone how to live their lives. I just want to help them show up as their most authentic selves and to be honest and to get their needs met.
Absolutely. Have you been shocked? I imagine you get a lot of clients, a lot of different clients from all walks of life. What is the most unique client that you've gotten booking an appointment with you that you just weren't expecting to experience or help a couple work through?
Yeah, it's everyone's favorite question. No, I wouldn't say I've necessarily been shocked, just because basically the training you go through to be a sex therapist is they try to throw the most shocking things possible at you to see if you're okay handling it. And so I think I was sufficiently desensitized. And there's this thing called a SAR. It stands for, I think, like sexual assessment or sexual attitude reassessment or something, which is literally just looking at the most out there kinks and stuff like that and figuring out what makes you feel uncomfortable so that you can work on that within yourself and make sure that if somebody comes in with that you're going to be able to help them. So I that's a bit of a tangent. In terms of the most interesting things people have been into, I think the really out there kinks don't shock me as much. What really shocks me more, I think, is the ways in which people just like want dynamics in their relationship that seem a little like abnormal to me. I should say I don't want to kink shame, but
Right.
not only do I want to be dominant in the bedroom or submissive in the bedroom, but I also want our lives to have that sort of dynamic as well. And how can we try to make it so that like I am very submissive in our lives, but that doesn't impact the respect that you have for me or something like that. And so, in the bedroom, I'm kind of so desensitized at this point that people are going to do what they're going to do. Um,
Right.
but it's when those lines get blurred in life as a whole that I think I need to, within myself, try to just stay grounded and stay focused and understand this is what this person wants to do. Is it harmful for them or is this just a preference?
That brings up an interesting point because you're trained to initiate um a phone call, emergency contact, right? You're supposed to have an
Mhm.
emergency contact and action plan for this client. And so when they come into your session with bruises and and welts and bumps, and maybe you're trained to, hey, are you okay? Like,
Mhm.
and she's like, oh no, this is all what I wanted. Like, this is all last night's um last night. And
Mhm.
so is what, have you ever faced a bias, a ethically biased position, or you ever been put in a position where you're like, okay, this is I like this is a conflict.
Mhm.
I'm trained to report this. She has welts on her skin, she has bumps, bruises, but she's telling me this is okay. She's telling me this is fine.
Yeah, and that gets into a really serious subject as well around what it's like to be, the person that's in a relationship with an abuser. Is this something they genuinely and enthusiastically are consenting to, or are they just saying this because they don't want it to be reported? Are
That's their
is the
dom.
Yep. Yeah, and is the abuse itself, basically, are we using kink as an excuse to abuse somebody? Is the abuse itself just creating this dynamic where, you might feel yourself like, "Oh, yeah, I actually do think there's a healthy relationship," when in fact you're being isolated from your family and, you're hiding things or lying to people and things of that nature, and it is hard to assess, and that's why the number one thing I always try to do with clients is establish the strong rapport at first so that if there is something going on, they're comfortable opening up to me and I can just be curious about it. And I'm not going to say, hey, you got to tell me right now, is this abuse or is this just the kink? But to rather say, hey, why don't you tell me about this experience? Why don't you tell me about how the two of you negotiated what your boundaries would be, negotiate whether you have a safe word and things of that nature, and to get them talking and to see from a holistic perspective what is this experience actually like for them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love it. I want to ask, what's your superpower? What sets you apart from every other sex therapist out there, every male therapist? What's your superpower? What's something that you can uniquely go into therapy that clients book you for time and time and time again?
So I like to say I'm just awkward enough to feel pretty approachable, and so people are willing to open up to me. And I say that just in the sense that like I don't need to be the most um like the expert with the most hours of training necessarily. I need to be someone where you can feel safe coming and saying whatever's on your mind and knowing that the answer will be something along the lines of like, all right, I hear you. Like let's talk through it and let's figure out what we're going to do. Let's figure out why this either is an issue for you or why this is something that's appealing to you. And there's just no judgment there. And a niche that I've actually developed a lot is working with the people that have been the ones in their relationship that have been unfaithful and they've cheated on their partners. They have an incredible sense of shame around that. They don't want to tell somebody that because they feel awful about it, and yet they're scared because, well, I did this once and I don't want to repeat this behavior again, but I don't know how to stop. I feel compelled to do it. um, and so that ability to get them to really open up and say, just tell me about the situation, tell me what led to this behavior, is so valuable because it's the last thing anyone wants to tell somebody else about.
That's so true. That's so true. Book an appointment with Mr. Daniel today. This is dope. This is dope. This is big. I want to pivot
Let's do it.
because you've been doing this for some time now, and you have insight, you have wisdom into other mental health practices that are failing. So I need your expertise and your knowledge on what is the most common thing you see mental health practices in this space just getting wrong time and time again. Offices are closing. Some some um, offices I've approached and they said, "Oh, just do cash pay." I get all the TikTok reels and all social media
Hmm.
posts. Oh, you want to get more cash pay clients? That's the way to go. That's the way to do it. I don't but or you said you take insurance. Why don't you go to the
Mhm.
cash pay model? Or what is it? Why are practices just not killing it? Is it cash pay or is it insurance?
So I think part of the reason we're pushed to cash pay a lot of the time is because insurance just have this fixed rate that they'll pay based on your degree, sometimes based on your specialty, very much based on the which insurance company you're working for, as well as where you're located. And some people are just saying, that I'm doing the math on how many clients I can see in a given week, just from a time perspective, from what I can emotionally handle, and dollars and cents aren't adding up for me to be able to support my family. And I have a ton of empathy around that. I personally take insurance because I think it's important to provide that access. I don't want to only be able to offer care to the wealthiest echelon of people who are able to afford that. I think everyone should be able to get therapy if they think it's something that would improve their lives. But I'm also in a fortunate situation, or in a situation for me, where I don't have kids. I have a partner who also works. And so we have my income as well as her income. And so I'm able to swing things financially that other people might not be able to if they have, a partner and a bunch of kids depending on them, or if they live in a higher cost of living area or something like that. And so while I think that if therapists are able to accept insurance and able to make it work, that it's a really good thing to do. I really don't blame the people that just do cash pay because they're just trying to look out for themselves and their families. Um, and so I see this more as a systemic problem of why is it that therapists can't take insurance and make what would be a living that can support them? Why is it that we're pushed into this decision about, do I want to take insurance and either take on more clients than I can necessarily handle and ultimately feel burnt out, or do I want to take on cash pay and then not be able to have my services be accessed by some of the people that really need it? And it's a terrible choice to have to make.
It is. It's a conflict, right? Because
Hmm.
if you it's almost like it's hard, right? You have to make a decision, just like you shared earlier. You have to make a decision. Well, this client can't meet their copay because they're going through a financial hardship. Insurance, what insurance is going to pay me isn't it's not worth your professional time,
Hmm.
right? To some degree, some clients, not all clients, and so you have to make a kind of a decision, right, on whether am I going to stick with this or am I going to help this
Hmm.
client? Am I going to you know do cash pay and get rid of all the insurance nonsense because I have a family to support, like you said, you have a family to support, you have bills to pay, and so it puts you in an awkward place.
Does.
um, and I feel I don't know. I don't know if that's an issue when coming up in this business. Like, when did you make the decision to go insurance route or cash pay route? Like, should they be thinking about this early on who want to start their own startup in mental health?
Yeah, I
Or
think it's a choice you want to make from the start. I started with when I was working in a group practice, and so I was under a supervisor who accepted insurance, and she really showed me the ropes and everything, and so I became more comfortable with that. So that my comfort level with that really contributed to that choice. I'm also someone who feels kind of uncomfortable with marketing. I don't think that really um, doing that whole part of the business aspect of it fits my strengths as well. And so trying to get cash pay clients I thought would be challenging. And so for me, this model both fit better with my morals and with my strengths. And I think for a lot of people, they just need to make this choice about what they want their business ultimately to look like. And for the clients who are out there and saying, this stinks, I really want a therapist, it's all cash pay, it's too expensive, I can't afford it. they're correct to be angry about that. But I think if they're really angry at the therapist, then the anger is a little bit pointing at the wrong place. They're better off being angry either at the insurance company who is making the insurance maze too difficult for therapists to get in network with, or that is reimbursing too low for therapists to make a decent living on it. And if you want to look at a higher level, they could be angry at the healthcare system as a whole, or some of the policies that make it so inefficient, or even stigmas that have existed for decades that are making it so this is something that isn't being prioritized. And so the emotion of I want therapy, but I can't afford it, and that's awful, is 100% correct. But we need bigger changes than just trying to strong arm therapists into all accepting insurance.
Yeah, yeah. I've heard that. I've heard that. It's like a client is mad because you're out of network. What do you mean? You have what I'm looking for. You have the specialty. Daniel has a specialty, but what do you mean you don't accept my insurance? What I mean is, are you willing to pay out of pocket?
Mhm,
Well, what's your out of pocket rate? And it's XYZ dollars. And it's like, that's outrageous. Do you understand the degree? Do you understand the years of experience? Do you understand that I'm going to help you do the thing that you can't
mhm,
do on your own? Right? What is the value of that? I've heard that. And people have said that it's a value, right?
mhm.
The reason why people don't want to pay a price, or they don't want to pay that price, is value. And that's a thing. And that's what people need to consider when knocking your out of pocket rate. What do you think it is? Do you think it's value? I don't necessarily.
The Sorry, the question is, why are people upset about what my rate is?
Yeah, why would people be upset? And I heard one salesperson tell me,
Mm.
well, they don't see the value in your out of pocket rate. So,
Yeah, I
but
mean,
instead of angry at you, like you said, they're angry at something else. And he's saying that it's value. You
mhm.
didn't do it. Daniel didn't do a good job of
Gotcha,
selling the
gotcha, gotcha.
value of your out of pocket rate. Do you think that's true?
I think it's partially true. There are a lot of really good marketers out there who know a lot more than I do about marketing who would say that's true, and I think there's something to that. There are also a lot of therapists out there who have a full caseload of self-pay clients, so it's clearly possible to do this. Um, but I think part of the reason people are upset as well is because therapy is something that's so valuable and that they feel like they desperately need, and they're being blocked from it. They are feeling stuck. They're feeling like they're not able to get their needs met. And if I had a big problem and I felt like there was someone out there that could help me, but because of money they just weren't going to help me, yeah, I'd be pretty pissed.
Yeah, that's so true. That's so true. I want to talk about tech.
Let's do it.
Tech in therapy. I saw this long-winded LinkedIn post about this therapist she was almost violent and she was really upset at artificial intelligence. The contradiction now and the conflict now is
Mhm,
people put some therapists introducing AI into their practice. And some people are nervous, some people are extremely on the left, and then there are people that are extremely on. Very few people are in the middle,
mhm.
right? Where do you stand as far as introducing technology and AI into the mental health space?
That's right. You saw a long-winded LinkedIn post. I'm like, oh God, I've posted those. I hope it wasn't mine. But but no, luckily that didn't track what I've posted. I'm trying to be one of the people that is more in the middle about that. I do genuinely feel like we need a more nuanced conversation around um, the role of tech, inclusive of but not limited to AI in therapy, because but it's similar to the question about cash pay versus insurance and all that, which is that it's a solution to a bigger problem. There are a lot of these AI therapists in the most extreme version where their pitch is, well, people can't get therapy, and so here's this AI therapist, because if you can't get a human, well, maybe this is a decent alternative. Or if your human's not available at 4 a.m. when you're freaking out, well, I am. And the real question we should be asking, at least in the former example, is, well, why is it that people aren't able to get access to therapy in the first place? Why is it that like instead of, or can we get to a point where instead of um saying, well, you can't get a human, so you may as well try to use AI, well, why don't we fix the fact that people aren't able to find a human therapist to start with? And So my biggest concern about AI therapy, and this touches on the second question of, well, your human is not available at 4 a.m. when you're freaking out. Well, that's true. That also misunderstands what therapists are actually trying to do. My goal isn't to constantly talk you down from a crisis. I mean, obviously, if you're having a crisis, I'm going to try to talk to you about it in the moment. My goal is to help you realize that you have the skills and you have the resilience to get yourself out of that crisis. And so I worry that with AI therapists, if they're constantly there, you're basically just repeatedly putting a band-aid on a wound rather than figuring out how you can just heal that wound to start with and doing some of that deeper work. Moving past that a little bit, I think there still is a lot of space for tech in general. I think there are a lot of tools that can be helpful both for therapists and for the thing I'm passionate about, which is changing the broader system. Can we figure out a way for tech to help us improve outcomes so that people get their needs met and maybe they don't need therapy anymore, and then all of a sudden the demand's a little bit lower and more people can get in the door, more people can have access. Can we use tech in a way that they can reach out to a therapist who they might not otherwise have access to, or they can feel a little bit more accountable in the middle of their week when they're not in a session? If I talk to a client about, well, you want to do a few of these things and that might really help, is there some piece of tech that can just help them walk through that, help them be accountable so they're not feeling like they're just completely on their own in between sessions? And so I think we just need to frame this as tech as a way to improve the field as a whole and the way that we're doing therapy, because honestly, the way we're doing therapy could probably be a lot better, as opposed to, well, I introduced this AI chatbot, and so we just don't need therapists anymore.
Absolutely. Yeah, that chatbot thing was huge. People were losing their mind, like, I don't want to talk to a computer. And then the fear is, what if that computer diagnoses someone incorrectly, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or someone who's, like you said, at 4 a.m. on the fence about to jump, and that robotic therapist glitches or freezes or
Mm-hmm.
makes the wrong call or makes the wrong decision. And so, yeah, but I applaud your effort to try and meet in the middle, right? You're not just an extremist and saying this is it, this is the way it is, and this is the way it has to stay. You're
Mm-hmm.
you're opening your mind and you're opening to the conversation, right? To see what we can
Mm-hmm.
explore and what avenues we can let in, what we should let. Like there are some clear winners, right? To say, hey, we need to introduce this yesterday
Mm-hmm.
because we need to introduce this model or this idea, this concept yesterday. Like the software that we use at our practice is when they started off, they didn't have a lot of stuff. They didn't have
Mm-hmm.
a lot of things, but the CEO and the founders and the owners are they're really motivated and they're adding stuff. They've added a lot of stuff since the time we opened in January till now. And
Mm.
it's hilarious
Yeah.
because and everybody talks about simple practice, right? Everybody talks about the highlight, the creme de la creme,
Yeah.
but it's so gosh darn expensive. So we see both sides, waiting for e-prescribe, right? Stuff like that, additions that can be added and work well with the EHR system, but it's like it's a mess. And AI, I think I'm interested in AI that helps you,
Mm-hmm.
right? AI that helps the therapist speed up documentation. But the fear is you're using names, potentially date of births in the AI.
Mm-hmm.
And now this computer, this chatbot has now taken that information and stored it somewhere off site, which is not,
Yeah.
and people are really fearful of that. And so I understand the chatbot thing, but I'm thinking something to help the therapist speed it up because
100%.
I'm for that. Are you for that?
Yeah. And so can I give you my therapist hot take?
Please.
So I don't know if this is going to be a popular opinion, but so I'll preface this. Therapy is great. It helps a lot of people and all that. But my hot take is that therapy needs to be better. I think that, if you look at a lot of the studies and all that, therapy makes meaningful differences for a lot of people, but it's not making meaningful differences. Like the effectiveness rate isn't like 95% or anything like that. It's a lot lower than that. And what I see in that is that there's so much room to grow there. And there's so much resistance from therapists to a lot of these tools saying, well, what matters is the relationship in the room. What matters is the connection and all that. And that's true to some degree. But there's also a lot of people out there who are going to therapy and they're either not getting better or they're not getting better as much as they'd want to get. And so we have got to be open to the fact that we have room to grow here. And, this can be from a million different things. It can be from perhaps some sort of tech that gives us feedback and says, hey, this is what I think you're doing well as a therapist. This is what you're not doing as well. So maybe you could, try to improve that. It can be something that disrupts the system such that I can make a living seeing fewer clients, and all of a sudden your therapist isn't as burnt out and they're more present and they're more able to help you. I mean, it can be, there's some crazy work with psychedelic assisted therapy right now, which has some incredible results. And so it can be tech. It doesn't have to be tech, but we need to be open to the fact that therapy right now is better than nothing, but is not nearly good enough.
For sure. I'm also excited. I'm keeping my eye on this company. I'm also excited about virtual reality therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So your client is in the metaverse. Y'all put on this helmet and you meet the client and you can whoosh. And now you're in a rainforest and you can feel the breeze blowing in your neck and you can smell the flowers in your headset and you can, and you're immersed in this virtual reality space, or you're on the top of Mount Everest performing therapy. Like, hey, you have a fear of heights. Let's baby step this in. We're gonna start at the bottom of Mount Everest, and then we're gonna go to the middle, and then we're gonna end up at the top of this therapy session. How do you feel? I think that's exciting. I think that's necessary. I think that's cool. I think it takes it to another level.
Yeah, the VR stuff is crazy. I'm not technical enough to even understand exactly how it's working, but from what I've read, the results are really promising. I am an early investor actually in one of the companies that's doing some VR stuff. So I'm not associated with them at all. They were just doing a fundraising round that I contributed to. But I think that with AI flying in everywhere, people have kind of forgotten about VR when there's actually a ton of really promising work being done there. And so the other soapbox I get on a lot is that we need to stop conflating tech with just AI. AI is one subset of some of the tech that's happening, but there are so many other really promising types of things out there. And if we try to just ignore everything in favor of AI, then we're going to be dismissing some people that can really help us out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm surprised Mark Zuckerberg hasn't already explored that with the metaverse. I thought that's where we were going. Right.
Yeah, he may be trying to. Who knows?
Right. Who knows? Well, he got to get past all the lawsuits first.
He's a busy guy.
busy guy. I'm going to get you out of here on this final question. You've dropped so many nuggets this episode. So much is wisdom, so much insight. If you could burn down, I should start with that, right? If you could burn down one part of the mental health field and rebuild it, magic wand, money's no issue, and you could change something in the mental health space, what would it be?
So it's hard to answer that without burning down the entire healthcare system to start out. But I think if I could burn down, I think we need to treat our early career clinicians better. Right now, what it looks like when you're in your early career, for the most part, is you go to a community mental health space in which you're expected to work 1 million hours a week. You get paid very little, but what they give you is they give you that clinical supervision, those hours toward licensure that I was talking about earlier. And so this does a few things. It burns people out so that by the time they are fully licensed and they're able to maybe get a job where they can make a little bit more money and, see clients that fit a certain specialty that they're passionate about, they're already burnt out and they feel like they just feel like they're not able to bring their best self. It also drives a lot of the best clinicians out. They get a year in and they say, this is crazy. I'm barely able to put food on my table. I'm exhausted all the time. Why am I still doing this? I still have another year or two to go. And these are people that could be great clinicians, and we need more great clinicians. And all of a sudden they just choose a different career path. And then the really tough part about that is that the people that are often facing the biggest systemic issues, they only have access to those community mental health spaces. So they're seeing less experienced clinicians who are burnt out and are being asked to do things that are unreasonable. And so these people that need not to compare people's trauma, but these people that need help really imminently are being cycled through one therapist to the next because people are quitting and people are not able to handle their care. And so, if we can find some way to train people in supportive environments and to pay them a wage that they can actually live on and to train them so that they're really excited about this work, then I think we can really build from the ground up.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You heard it here first, y'all. Change the game. Change the game. But don't give up. Don't give up. You're right. Support the future of therapists because, like we talked about earlier, it's a low demand. It's a high demand for therapists, but there's very few professionals coming in to replace us. And so, pay people right, take care of people, take care of each other. Sir, you are incredible. You are amazing. How can people connect with you? How can people learn more? The train has already left the station, but it's not too late for others to hop on board. How can people connect with you?
Yeah, I appreciate that. So I have a Substack that's called The Disrupted Therapist, which is basically my dive into this whole field of tech disruption and everything. And so, I encourage people to give that a read, to reach out to me there. You can also find me at inflectionpointtherapy.com. There's a contact me form on there. If you have any specific questions, or even if you just want to hop on Zoom and chat for a little while, feel free to reach out to me that way. And I'm always around to have some of these conversations. I think that's the only way anything's going to get changed.
Absolutely. What states are you licensed in?
Maryland, Virginia, and Colorado.
Super dope. Super dope. Virginia. Haha. Absolutely. Great market.
Yeah,
Great market.
I was right in the DC area, so I was in that corner of like right in the border of Maryland and Virginia, and then COVID hit, and all of a sudden people were doing teletherapy, but I had clients who'd been driving over the river, so I had to scramble real quick to get licensed in Virginia so I could keep seeing them.
Slick. Smart. Super smart. Super smart. All right, y'all. That's incredible. Check him out. And for our audio listeners, that's inflectionpointtherapy.com. Inflection Point Therapy. If you can't spell that, reach out to me and I'll help you spell it. We'll get you on board and get you where you need to go. You guys are absolutely phenomenal. All right, y'all. We gotta let this incredible man go. He has many more lives to change, many more men and women to help, and many more future technology companies to invest to help better the mental health space for you and me so we can all win and succeed. So, y'all, like we end every show, take care of your friends, take care of your family, and always, always take care of business. This is Marcus, your famous and fabulous host of Cinema Style Podcast. And the super fragilistic expialidocious Mr. Daniel Fleshner signing off. He's awesome. Check him out. Absolutely. Love you guys. Bye.